My twin sister stole $80,000 from me and my dad kicked me out. But when I exposed her fraud in front of the entire family with undeniable proof, I forced her to pay every last penny or go to prison. I'm 26 years old. I work at a clothing store in the city, and I need to tell this story because what happened to me about a year ago basically destroyed my entire life before I could rebuild it again. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything was normal, or at least what I thought was normal. I grew up in a small town with my dad, Robert, and my identical twin sister, Isabella. Our mom died when we were like 8 years old, a car accident, and since then it was just the three of us. My dad worked in construction, long hours and all that, but he always tried to be there for us, or so I thought. Isabella and I were identical, like really identical. People confused us all the time, even our teachers at school. But inside we were completely different. You know what I mean? I was the quiet one, the one who got good grades, the one who helped Dad with the household bills. Isabella was the outgoing one, the one who always wanted more, the one who dreamed of living in the city and having a glamorous life. After we graduated high school, she left immediately for the city, like 2 hours from home, and got a job at some marketing company or something. I stayed helping Dad with his construction business, doing the bookkeeping and stuff like that. Things between Isabella and me started getting weird like 3 years ago. She came home less often, and when she did come, she was always wearing super expensive clothes, designer bags, that kind of thing. Once I asked her, "Hey, how can you afford all that?" And she just laughed and said something like, "I work hard, Soph. You should try it." It hurt, honestly, but I thought she was just being Isabella. Always a bit show-offy, a bit competitive. Dad was proud of her. He'd say things like, "Look at your sister. She really made something of herself. When are you going to do something with your life?" And I'd swallow it because, well, what was I going to say? Then came that day, the day that changed everything. It was a normal Tuesday. I was at Dad's house helping him with some business papers when the mail arrived. There were like 3 big envelopes, those official ones that have plastic windows and look important. I opened them and almost fell over when I read what they said. They were court orders, lawsuits for unpaid loans. The first one was from a bank I didn't even know, saying that I had taken out a loan for $15,000 2 years ago and hadn't paid a single installment. The second was from a credit union, another loan for $22,000. The third was from another financial institution, $18,000. I sat there with those papers in my hand thinking, what the hell is this? I had never taken out a loan in my life, literally never. I didn't even have credit cards because I was scared of going into debt. I showed the papers to Dad and he read them, and I saw his face getting redder and redder. "Sophie," he said in that voice he used when he was really angry. "What is this?" I explained that I had no idea, that I had never applied for those loans, that it had to be a mistake. But he didn't believe me. He kept reading the documents and saw the dates, the amounts, everything was there on official paper. "A mistake?" he yelled. "A mistake? It clearly says your name here, your social security number, your date of birth. How is it going to be a mistake?" I tried to explain, but he was so furious he wouldn't let me talk. He told me I was irresponsible. How dare I do something like this? That I had completely disappointed him. And then he said the words that still hurt when I remember them. "You're not my daughter. I don't want to see you again. Get out of my house." I was in shock, like literally paralyzed. I couldn't even cry. I just stood there while he yelled at me. I begged him to listen to me, to let me investigate. But he didn't want to know anything. He gave me like an hour to pack my things and leave. I remember going up to my room, which was the same room I'd had since I was a kid, and stuffing what I could into 2 suitcases, clothes, some photos, important documents. I went downstairs and my dad was standing there with his arms crossed, looking at me like I was a stranger. He didn't say a word when I left. I had nowhere to go, honestly. I had like $3,000 saved up, which was everything I had put together working with Dad. I called Isabella from the car, crying, and told her what had happened. She sounded surprised. She said, "Oh God, Soph, that's horrible. Do you want to stay with me for a few days?" And I, desperate, said yes. I drove the 2 hours to the city and arrived at her apartment. It was an incredible place, like those new buildings with a doorman and everything. I wondered how she could afford it on her salary. But I was so upset I didn't pay much attention to it. I stayed with her for like a week, sleeping on her couch. During that time, I tried calling the banks, but nobody would give me information over the phone. They said I had to go in person. Isabella told me not to worry so much, that it was probably identity theft, and it would get resolved. But I saw how she looked at me sometimes, like she knew something I didn't know. You know what I mean? But I was so confused and scared that I thought I was just imagining it. After a week, Isabella told me her boyfriend was going to move in with her, and that I needed to find my own place. I mean, I understood. It was her apartment and all. But the way she said it hurt. Like super casual. As if it was no big deal that I basically had nowhere to go. I used part of my savings to rent a tiny room in a shared house with like 3 other people. It was horrible. The walls were so thin I could hear everything. But it was what I could afford. I needed a job urgently because my savings were running out super fast. I found a position at a clothing store in the mall. It didn't pay much, basically minimum wage. But it was something. That's where I met Chloe, a girl with super bright red hair who worked at the same store. We became friends almost immediately. She had that energy that makes you feel better just by being around her, you know? One day, like 2 months after I got kicked out of the house, I told Chloe the whole story during our lunch break. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she thought for a moment. "Soph," she said, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but don't you have an identical twin sister?" And I was like, "Yeah, Isabella, why?" And she said, "Don't you think it's possible that she pretended to be you?" I froze. "No," I said. "Isabella would never do that. She's my sister." But Chloe insisted. "Think about it," she said. "You're identical. She lives an expensive life she supposedly can't afford. The loan started like 2 years ago, right when she moved to the city." I didn't want to believe it, like I really didn't want to. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. All those expensive things, that luxury apartment, the new car she had, where was the money coming from? Chloe convinced me to investigate. The next weekend we both had off. We went to the banks that appeared on the court orders. The first one was like 20 minutes from where Isabella lived. We went in, and I asked to speak with a manager. I explained the situation, and the woman, who looked like she was in her 40s with glasses, looked at me weird and said, "But Miss Bennett, you were here 2 years ago to apply for that loan." "I was here. I remember you perfectly." My stomach turned. I told them no, that I had never been there, and I asked them if they could show me the documentation. After like half an hour of back and forth, they finally brought the folder with all the documents. And there it was, a copy of an ID with my name, my date of birth, my social security number. But in the photo, it was Isabella. Well, it was me technically, but I knew it was Isabella because she has a small mole near her left ear that I don't have. Chloe saw it too and squeezed my hand. The signature on the documents wasn't mine either. I could tell. I practiced my signature like 1,000 times when I was 15 until I got it perfect. And this one was different. The curves were wrong. I took photos of everything with my phone. The woman at the bank looked uncomfortable. Obviously, she was realizing something didn't add up. I explained to her that I was a victim of identity theft and that I would probably need official copies of everything for the police. We went to the other 2 banks that same day. The story was the same everywhere. Employees who recognized me, who said, "Yes, you were here, you applied for the loan in person," documents with my information but Isabella's photo, signatures that weren't mine. In total, Isabella had taken out 5 different loans in my name for more than $80,000. $80,000. I couldn't even process it. When we left the last bank, it was already nighttime and I was shaking. Chloe hugged me there in the parking lot while I cried. Everything made sense now. The luxury apartment, the expensive clothes, the car, the trips she posted on social media, it had all been with money she stole using my identity. My own sister, my twin, the person who was supposed to know me better than anyone in the world, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And that night, I barely slept. I spent the time looking at all the photos I had taken of the documents, comparing the signatures, looking at that ID photo that was clearly Isabella pretending to be me. I thought about all the times I had seen her in the last few years, about all the lies. And I thought about my dad, about how he had kicked me out without even listening to me, about how he had believed the worst of me without giving me the benefit of the doubt. The next day, I called Isabella. "Hi, Soph," she said in that super cheerful voice, like nothing was wrong. "What's up?" I told her we needed to talk in person, that it was important. She said she was busy. "Maybe next week." And I said, "No, it needs to be today." Something in my voice must have alarmed her because after a moment she said, Okay. Let's meet at the usual cafe at 3. I arrived early and sat at a table in the back. Chloe wanted to come with me, but I told her I had to do this alone. Isabella arrived like 15 minutes late, like always, wearing a dress that probably cost like $500. She sat down and asked me what was so urgent. I took out my phone and showed her the photos. "Isabella," I said, "I need you to explain this to me." I saw her face change as she looked at the photos. First confusion, then recognition, then panic. "Soph, she started to say. But I interrupted her. "Did you use my identity to take out loans?" I asked her directly. She tried to deny it at first, saying she didn't know what I was talking about, that those photos could be fake. But I kept pressing. "I went to the banks." I told her. "The employees recognized you. I have copies of the documents with your photo using my name." She finally broke down. She started crying right there in the cafe, saying she was so sorry, that things had gotten out of control. She told me how it started. The first loan was like 3 years ago. Just $5,000 from a small bank. She needed money for the apartment deposit and her credit was horrible, so she thought, we're identical, who's going to notice? And it worked. Nobody questioned anything. So she kept doing it. Loans getting bigger and bigger, from different institutions. And the payments? I asked her. She said she paid some at first, but then the bills were too many and too high, and she simply stopped paying. "Did you know the court orders were going to arrive in my name?" I asked her. She didn't answer, just kept crying. And then I understood everything. She hadn't just stolen my identity. She had deliberately left me with all the debt, while she continued living her perfect life. And when Dad kicked me out, she offered to let me stay with her not because she cared, but because she needed to make sure I didn't suspect anything yet. I told her I was going to the police, that what she had done was fraud, that she could go to jail. She begged me not to do it, that it would ruin her life. "And what about my life?" I yelled. "What about Dad kicking me out of the house? What about the fact that I now have $80,000 of debt I never asked for?" She kept apologizing, but I didn't want to hear her anymore. I got up and left. That week I consulted with a lawyer Chloe recommended to me, a middle-aged guy named Marcus Reed. I showed him all the evidence and he explained my options. I could report the fraud to the police and Isabella would probably go to jail. The banks would have to cancel the debts eventually, but the process could take years and meanwhile, my credit was destroyed. Or, I could try to get Isabella to pay everything back voluntarily and clear my name without involving the authorities, but that meant trusting that she would actually do it. Marcus told me that family identity theft was more common than people thought, that he had seen cases of parents doing this to their children, siblings to each other, even married couples. He told me that what Isabella had done wasn't just illegal, it was one of the deepest forms of betrayal because she had used our relationship, our identical appearance, to destroy my financial life. I spent weeks collecting all the evidence I could. I went to each bank again and asked for certified copies of all the documents. I got credit reports showing the unpaid loans ruining my score. I gathered screenshots from Isabella's social media, showing her expensive lifestyle on the exact dates when the loans were taken out. I organized everything in a huge folder with tabs and everything, basically like I was preparing a legal case myself. During all this time, I didn't talk to Isabella. She sent me like 1,000 messages saying we needed to talk, that she was so sorry, that she loved me. But I didn't respond to any of them. I also hadn't talked to Dad. He called me once, like 2 weeks after kicking me out, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. Then I found out there was going to be a family reunion in like 2 months. It was my grandmother's birthday, my dad's mom, and she always had these big reunions where all the extended family came. Uncles, cousins, everybody. And I had an idea. If I was going to expose Isabella and clear my name, what better place than in front of the whole family? I sent my grandmother a message saying I was going to the reunion. She was super happy, told me she missed me so much and that she didn't understand why Robert and I weren't talking. I didn't explain anything to her, Just told her she'd know soon. The weeks before the reunion were the longest of my life. I practiced what I was going to say like 1,000 times. I reviewed all my evidence constantly, making sure everything was perfect. Chloe helped me organize a presentation on my laptop with all the photos, documents, everything. It was like preparing for a trial, I guess. The day of the reunion, I arrived early. It was in my grandmother's backyard. You know, those reunions with long tables, food everywhere, kids running around. I saw Isabella on the other side of the yard and she saw me. Her face. I had never seen an expression like that on her. It was pure fear. I think in that moment she knew exactly what was going to happen. My dad was there too. When he saw me, his face hardened. He turned like he was going to leave. But my grandmother stopped him, said something to him, and he stayed. But he didn't come near me. Fine, I thought. Better that way. I waited until after lunch, when everybody was sitting around relaxing. My grandmother was about to cut her cake when I stood up and said loudly, "Sorry for interrupting, but I need to tell you all something." People got quiet and looked at me. Isabella was sitting like 3 tables away and looked like she was going to throw up. I started telling the story. I told them about the court orders, about how Dad had kicked me out, about the months I spent trying to understand what had happened. I took out my laptop and started showing the evidence. The photos of the documents, the fake signatures, the bank records. I heard people murmuring, "Oh God, it can't be. She wouldn't do that." Then I showed them the definitive proof. I put side by side a photo of me with my real ID and the photos of the fake IDs Isabella had used. I pointed out the mole near her ear that I don't have. I explained the dates of the loans and the photos she had posted on social media exactly in those same periods, showing expensive things she had just bought. The whole family was in absolute silence. My dad had gone pale. Isabella was crying with her face in her hands. "Do you understand now, Dad?" I said, looking at him directly. "Do you understand that you kicked me out without even listening to me? That your other daughter stole my identity and ruined my life and you automatically believed her?" Isabella suddenly stood up and started walking toward the exit. "Hey!" I yelled at her. "Where are you going?" But she kept walking, like almost running toward the parking lot. I followed her, with Dad behind me, and like half the family following us because this had become a complete drama. I caught up with her in the parking lot. She was next to her car, that BMW she probably bought with stolen money, crying hysterically. Dad arrived at that moment and stood between the two of us, looking at Isabella. "Is it true?" he asked in a voice I had never heard from him. "Did you do everything Sophie says you did?" Isabella couldn't even speak. She just nodded her head while crying. Dad turned toward me and I saw tears in his eyes too. "Sophie," he started to say, but I raised my hand. "No," I said. "I don't want to hear apologies now. You kicked me out without listening to me. You treated me like I was a criminal without giving me even one chance to explain myself." Then I looked at Isabella. "You have 2 options," I told her. "Either you go with me to the police right now and plead guilty to fraud, or you pay back every penny of those loans and do whatever is necessary to completely clear my name. If you choose the second one, you have 1 year. 1 year to pay everything and fix this mess you created. If you don't do it, I'm going to the police anyway, and I assure you, you're going to jail." She said she would pay everything back, that she would do whatever was necessary. Marcus, my lawyer, already had an agreement prepared that she had to sign, a legal document that made her responsible for all the debts. I had her sign it right there on the hood of her car with my dad and 2 of my uncles as witnesses. The following months were weird. Isabella sold her car, moved to a much cheaper apartment, got a second job. She started making big monthly payments to the banks. Dad tried to talk to me several times, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed time to process everything, Isabella's betrayal and his too. It took like 14 months total, a bit more than the year I had given her, but Isabella finally paid off all the loans. She contacted each bank, explained the situation, made full payments of everything she owed. She signed affidavits admitting that she had committed the fraud. Marcus helped me make sure my credit was completely cleared, that there was no record of those loans in my name left. Like 2 months ago, I finally agreed to meet with Dad. We went to a neutral cafe, not his house or mine. He apologized, cried, told me he had been the worst father in the world, that he should never have doubted me. I told him I forgave him, but that things were never going to be like before. He had damaged our relationship in a way that couldn't be completely repaired. You know what I mean? We could rebuild something new, but the old thing was broken forever. As for Isabella, I haven't talked to her since the day she signed the agreement. Technically, she's my sister, my identical twin. But she feels like a stranger now. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ever really going to forgive her, or if I'm just going to pretend to forgive her because that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. Honestly. I'm still working at the clothing store. Chloe and I are still best friends. Basically, she saved me when nobody else was there. I moved to a better apartment, small but all mine, and little by little I'm rebuilding my life and my credit. Marcus says that in a few years my credit is going to be good enough to take out a real loan if I ever need one, which is ironic considering everything that happened. Last week, my dad called me to ask if I wanted to go to dinner. I said yes. I don't know if things are ever going to be normal between us again, but I guess I'm willing to try. As for Isabella, she sent a message a few days ago saying she finished paying off the last loan and that she hoped we could talk soon. I haven't responded yet. Maybe someday, but not today. For now, I'm focused on myself, on healing, on recovering the identity she tried to steal from me, and that's enough, I guess.